These scary cursed villages and places around the world hiding pure evil and tales of a time lost will absolutely leave you breathless and may give you nightmares. Hashima Island. Hashima Island, also known as Battleship Island and to some as the Island of the Ghosts, has a history associated with forced labor, especially during World War II, and the subsequent abandonment of the island after the decline of the coal industry. Many believe it's cursed and haunted, and while the island has a somber past, it's more accurately seen as a symbol of industrialization and the human cost of it. The buildings were built by Korean and Chinese prisoners who were forced to work here from 1930 to just after World War II. The conditions of these forced laborers were hard, and some never made it back home. Now, the people who worked here named the island Jail Island or even Hell Island. Now, after the war, the Japanese came to the island to work here themselves. The island had its peak population in 1959. More than 5,000 people worked and lived on Hashima Island. And because the island wasn't very big, this meant they had only a 5-foot living space each. Even though tourists are allowed to visit the island today, the echoes of the past still linger here, especially in the minds of the relatives of the forced laborers that have been forced to work there and inside the crumbling buildings. Fishermen who sail near the island claim they have seen strange flickering lights in the buildings. Even though the island has no electricity, strange noises have been heard and cold spots have been felt. People say, they have this sensation of being watched, and there are some claims of people that have been touched by unseen hands. Pripyat, Ukraine. Now, Pripyat is frequently described as a cursed city due to its abandonment following the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. The town, built to house workers at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, was evacuated after the accident due to a very high level of radiation and remains largely uninhibited to this day. Now, while not officially, cursed in a supernatural sense, some say, the term reflects the city's tragic history and the lingering effects of the nuclear accident. Chernobyl was cut off from the rest of the world and left to rot for decades. The nearby town of Pripyat was similarly affected, and all residents had to be evacuated. Some street artists and adventurers now explore the area since the radiation levels had dropped, but prolonged stays are still very harmful to people's health. The pictures of abandoned car dealerships are sure to give you the chills too. Poveglia Island in Italy. Now, nestled in the Venetian lagoon, Poveglia Island is often referred to as one of the most haunted and cursed places in the world. Its dark past, marked by doom, disease, and despair, has made it a local point for ghost stories and paranormal investigations. Now, though small and seemingly unassuming, Poveglia carries a very ominous, reputation that continues to draw the curious and the brave. Poveglia's haunted history begins during the bubonic plague in the 14th century. Venice, a very bustling trade hub, was frequently ravaged by outbreaks of the fatal disease. Now, to prevent the spread of infection, Poveglia was transformed into a quarantine island where those suspected of carrying the plague were actually forcibly sent away. Many who arrived on the island never left. They succumbed to the disease, their bodies buried in mass graves or burned. It is said that over 100,000 people passed away in Poveglia, their ashes mingling with the soil. Even today, locals claim that the ground is made up of more ash than earth. Okpo Land in South Korea. Once one of the continent's most famous amusement parks, Okpo Land became a ghost town almost overnight, and many people believe this place is cursed and haunted. It became abandoned and shut down when a cart on a duck-themed ride derailed and unalived a girl in 1999. It actually wasn't the first fatality to occur at Okpo Land. At least one other person passed away on the exact same ride in the early 90s, but the park remained open. However, after the second fateful accident, the owner vanished and the theme park descended into disrepair. Now, it was, slated for demolition in 2011, and the land was earmarked for development, although apparently nothing has been built there yet, which is probably for the best because trespassers say they hear voices, see the shadow of the children running around, and claim they've even felt a general sense of unease the second they step foot there. The Island of the Dolls in Mexico City, Mexico. Now, the Island of the Dolls is a unique and very eerie tourist attraction located in the canals of Mexico City. The island's name comes from hundreds of old, broken, and mutilated dolls hanging from trees and scattered throughout the area. The story behind the dolls is rooted in local legend and folklore, with many believing the island is haunted. The story goes that a man named Don Santana Barrera lived on the island as a hermit. One day, he reportedly found the body of a drowned girl in the canals. Believing the doll was hers, he hung it up on a tree in memory of her and as a means of just appeasing her spirit. Now, over time, he began collecting and hanging more dolls, believing they would ward off evil spirits and calm the girl's spirit. Now, the Island of the Dolls is widely believed believed to be haunted and cursed, with locals claiming to hear whispers, see shadows, and even witness the dolls moving on their own. Some attribute the dolls' movements to the wind, of course, and the weakening of their wires over time, while others believe they are, caused by the spirits of the girl and Don Pereira. Many people have filmed their time being there, and it gives you goosebumps just watching it. Ryugyong Hotel in Pyongyang, now unoccupied, unopened, and never finished, and often called the Hotel of Doom or the Ghost Hotel due to its unfinished state and eerie appearance. This 105-story shell of the Ryugyong Hotel is a scar on Pyongyang's skyline and North Korea's pride. Construction on the hotel began in 1987, but stopped after 5 years due to just a lack of funds. Once proudly, emblazoned across North Korean stamps, this vacant hotel soon became airbrushed out of official photos. The Ryugyong was intended to be a symbol of North Korea's strength and architectural, prowess. Its failure to materialize as a functioning hotel has made it a symbol of the country's economic struggles and isolation. The hotel's imposing presence and mysterious history have led to it being featured in numerous articles, documentaries, even online discussions, fueling speculation and contributing to its haunted aura. Now, despite nearly 2 decades of abandonment, construction actually resumed in 2008, but whether the hotel will ever be completed is open to debate. San Juan, Michoacan in Mexico, beginning in 1943, successive eruptions of the Paracutan volcano slowly engulfed houses, streets, and livelihoods, masking all signs of life under a black cloak of molten rock and ash, leaving behind ruins, particularly the church, partially buried in lava and ash. Now, defiantly protruding from a desolate landscape of ash and lava, this church tower is all that remains of the devastated village of San Juan. Now, this makes it a site of historical interest and a stark reminder of nature's power, attracting visitors who find it both awe-inspiring and melancholic. Now, today, tourists drawn to this isolated ruin can marvel at the still intact, though vacant, altar inside. Now, the desolate and surreal landscape, combined with the story of a town buried by a volcano, evokes a sense of just melancholy and wonder and a little bit of haunted. Kalyazin, Russia, now boldly rising 75 meters above the waterline, the bell tower of the flooded St. Nicholas Church marks the site where the Russian town of Kalyazin once stood. When the Ulik Reservoir was created in 1939, the town was, purposely flooded, and the landscape was irreplaceably altered. Now, attracted to the simplistic beauty of the remaining, landmark, tourists visiting on boats can actually explore this enduring landmark of the sunken town, although many believe it is cursed and haunted, so they stay away just to be safe. ZKP Tagansky in Moscow, Russia. Now, since its declassification in 1995, Bhangarh 42 has drawn many visitors keen to delve into the secrets of the past. Some people who have visited find the bunker's dark underground environment and historical context has created a sense of unease or even eeriness, and many people have claimed to have felt a very off-putting presence that they can't seem to explain. Hidden 60 meters below the streets of Moscow lies, the ZKP Tagansky, also known again as Bhangarh 42. Now, it is a former Soviet secret military facility in Moscow and a 7,000 square meter space which once served as a secret Cold War's era communication center. Now, built in the 1950s, this vast complex was designed to withstand a direct nuclear attack and filled with enough supplies to stay running for months afterwards. Presidio Modelo in Cuba. Presidio Modelo in Cuba is known for its very harsh history as a prison, particularly during its use in the 1950s. The prison, with its panopticon design, housed many political prisoners, including Fidel Castro and his brother Raul. Empty since 1967, this prison still radiates desperation and paranoia. Commissioned in 1926 by dictator Gerardo Machado and inspired, by this model, its oppressive architecture and designed to create a sense of constant invisible monitoring. Even though Fidel Castro was once an inmate here, under Castro's government, the prison's population ballooned to over 6,000 enemies of the state. Now, museum visitors can experience the forbidding atmosphere still present in these echoing corridors and vacant cells. Have you been to any of these abandoned places? Let me know. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ashley. Until next time, stay scared. These scary cursed villages and places around around the world hiding pure evil and tales of a time lost will absolutely leave you breathless and may give you nightmares. Hashima Island. Hashima Island, also known as Battleship Island and to some as the Island of the Ghosts, has a history associated with forced labor, especially during World War II, and the subsequent abandonment of the island after the decline of the coal industry. Many believe it's cursed and haunted, and while the island has a somber past, it's more accurately seen as a symbol of industrialization and the human cost of it. The buildings were built by Korean and Chinese prisoners who were forced to work here from 1930 to just after World War II. The conditions of these forced laborers were hard, and some never made it back home. Now the people who worked here named the island Jail Island or even Hell Island. Now after the war, the Japanese came to the island to work here themselves. Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, USA. This penitentiary is often described as a scary and haunted place, both for its dark history and reported paranormal activity. It's known for its creepy atmosphere and unsettling history of brutal punishments and solitary confinement. Many visitors and paranormal investigators have reported experiencing strange occurrences, including ghostly sightings, unexplained noises, and feelings of unease. Once the world's most expensive prison from 1829, this Philadelphia facility boasted grand architecture, modern luxuries, and notorious inmates, including Al Capone. One of the first penitentiaries ever built, it combined impressive design and strict discipline to inspire regret and reform in the hearts of convicts. It's also known for its harsh and often cruel treatments of inmates, including solitary confinement, physical punishments, their mad chair, and psychological torment. Since its closure in 1971, the complex has crumbled into a mass of deteriorating cell blocks, which are now recognized as a National Historic Landmark. Eastern State Penitentiary is open to visitors year-round, so go check it out if you want. Lee Plaza Hotel in Detroit, USA. A staggering 60% of the city's peak population has now moved away, leaving behind a living example of urban decay. Its vacant state and history contribute to its reputation for being eerie and potentially really scary. The formerly luxurious Lee Plaza Hotel stands windowless and exposed. It is just one of Detroit's many abandoned places that mark the shocking decline of a major American city. Once at the center of a booming motor industry, the successive blows of economic recessions, competition from overseas, and race riots chipped away at Detroit's early prosperity. Winchester Mystery House in California, USA. A number of employees and a few visitors claim to have crossed paths with Clyde, a mustached man sometimes seen pushing a wheelbarrow in the basement or trying to repair the fireplace in the ballroom. Then there are the gentle tugs of shirts or skirts during tours, and the report from longtime maintenance worker Denny. It's safe to say this place is really haunted. Although damaged in the 1906 earthquake, the house is open to visitors who can actually explore the 160 surviving rooms. Eccentric and extravagant, this Victorian mansion in California is a maze of dead ends, secret doorways, and stairs that lead literally nowhere. Driven by paranoia and superstition, Sarah Winchester, widow of William Winchester, began building in 1884 and ordered that construction should never cease. In the 38 years until her passing, the residence mushroomed into a labyrinth of architectural oddities, 7 stories high. Bodie Ghost Town in California, USA. Visitors and park rangers have reported seeing ghostly figures, hearing disembodied voices, and experiencing really other strange occurrences. Settled by prosecutors lured by the California gold rush in the mid-1800s, Bodie became a booming mining town of fortune-hungry men, saloon shootouts, and brawls. Now, its fortune was short-lived, however, and by the 1890s, gold strikes elsewhere had drawn the crowds away, causing the population to dwindle. Now, frozen in time, this ghost town became a national historical landmark in the 1960s. Now, tourists, not miners, flock here to walk the deserted streets and admire the town's arrested decline. Varosha, Cyprus. Now, an urban museum of corroding classic cars, destroyed high-rise hotels, and shop fronts boasting the latest in 1970s fashion for the deserted Varosha quarter in Famagusta City. Time froze in 1974. Now, following the Turkish invasion of Cyprus, Varosha's inhabitants were forced into a life of exile. Varosha has become a destination for very dark tourism, attracting visitors interested in exploring places with a somber or very tragic history, further contributing to its reputation as a place with a strong atmosphere. Once a favorite destination of the rich and the famous, people today today can only peep through barbed wire as nature reclaims all of the buildings.
In third place, we have Dead Man's Island. Even though it's kind of close to the public, Dead Man's Island is home to ghostly lore that is centuries old, so of course I had to talk about it. The list of spectral sightings and strange phenomena grows by the year, ranging from loud clanging noises that ring out in the dead of the night, to hurried footsteps that pace back and forth, or the unearthly moan of a young woman's sobs that fill the air. Tales of supernatural encounters stretch back more than a century, so the Squamish people call the place the Island of Dead Men. And a very long time ago, it said it was the site of a fierce battle. We're talking like northern and southern nations fought over claims to this plot of land. Now, the southern nation kidnapped 200 women, younglings, and elders from the north and held them captive. But when 200 young northern warriors traded themselves for the hostages' freedom, they were cut down on the spot. In the 1860s, the government offered to sell the land to one Samuel Brighouse. He declined the offer, but one of his partners, John Morton, decided why not. He rode to the island where he found hundreds of red cedar boxes scattered, amongst the foliage and perched in the upper branches of the tree, and quickly discovered they were fragile when he reached up to touch one of them, and it crumbled above his head, showering him with the bones of its long deceased inhabitant. Yeah, nope, that's when you run for the hills and say, no thanks. In the 1890s, a plague descended upon Vancouver, and Dead Man's Island was used as a pest house. So those who fell ill were sent to the island for quarantine. And if they got better, they were allowed to return home. If not, they never left. From 1899 to 1930, this island was home to a logging dispute. Local authorities and residents alike were kind of outraged by it, and at 6:30 a.m. on April 24th of 1899, when the developer headed out to the island with 30 men, then Mayor James Garden brought almost the entire police force with him to the island. When the developer attempted to cut down a tree, he and his men were arrested. Now, several similar episodes dotted the decades until the lease expired in 1930. In a 1909 incident, police occupied the island overnight to keep loggers at bay, and claimed they heard the rattling of dead man's bones and shrieking skeletons that threatened to haunt anyone who dared cut down trees on the island. The island is home to too many bodies to count. First Nations people, British merchant sailors, early pioneer residents of Moodyville, Hastings Sawmill and the Granite Town site, Canadian Pacific Railway workers who died during construction, victims of the Great Vancouver Fire of 1886, those who succumbed to smallpox, and, possibly some of the squatters who made the island their home for many years. No. Absolutely not. That's way too many dead bodies for my liking. Way too many spirits and angry ghosties. Absolutely not. In second place, we have the island of Poveglia. So the island is located in the lagoon near Venice and is famous for being one of the most haunted places in Italy. Tourists and locals alike are banned from this place, which was used for centuries as a place to exile the sick to prevent the spread of disease and, contain the mentally ill in an asylum built in the late 1800s. Yes, I'll backtrack and elaborate, and it's kind of similar to Dead Man's Island, but worse. In 1348, the bubonic plague arrived in Venice and Poveglia, and like many other small islands at the time, it became a quarantine colony. The plague on average killed like 1 out of 3 Europeans, and fearing the spread of the disease, Venice exiled many of its symptom-bearing citizens there. So if you sneeze, off you go. At the island's center, the dead and those too sick to protest were burned on giant pyres, and now this includes the tens of thousands of citizens dying on the mainland. And those fires would burn once more in 1630 when the Black Death again swept through the city. The small island was used as a mass burial ground, and ashes from human remains make up as much as 50% of the island's soil. Grapes, I hope it's a good fertilizer. The deaths of nearly 160,000 people on the island have given it its nickname, the Island of Ghosts. Now, a doctor at that asylum that I mentioned a moment ago was known to have experimented on patients with, crude lobotomies, and he jumped from the bell tower in the 1930s after claiming he had been driven mad by ghosts. I wonder why. You torture people and they're gonna haunt you in the afterlife? Go figure. Decades later, nearby residents claim to still hear the bell, even though it was removed many years earlier. A report titled Haunted History states that some restoration work had started in recent history, but abruptly stopped without explanation. Okay, maybe this is one spot on today's list I don't want to visit. And in first place, we have Bell Island. So time to travel to Newfoundland, Canada, but more specifically, the claustrophobic rocky mining tunnels. So there's a sense of miner spirit watching from every corner and crevice in this world, where the shadows flicker and the darkness, it's just heavy. So between when the mines opened in 1895 and the last mines closed in 1966, there were 106 fatalities and, triple those accidents. Miners lost arms, legs, some were left disfigured, while others died of lung disease. No big. Heritage Newfoundland and Labrador reported in 1938 that a methane gas explosion in the number 6 mine killed 2 men and injured several others. In the 1950s, with the implementation of more powerful and faster machinery, miners were often killed or wounded by runaway ore cars and falling debris, to name just a couple of disasters disasters. At the start of the mining, men wore felt baseball hats with the only light flickering from the dull glow of a candle on top and a tin lamp burning seal oil perched on a rocky ledge. Safety improved by like a smidgen around 1911 with the introduction of carbide lamps. And in 1935, miners wore battery-powered electric lights. But before all those great improvements, miners had no proper bathrooms or eating facilities, there was no warmth, and they worked like 10 to 12-hour shifts for 6 days a week for 5 to 7 cents an hour, seeing the sunlight only on Sundays. Okay, that sounds like me, but I swear, I do take a day off. Boys as young as 10 worked alongside men as old as 80, picking ore off the conveyor belts, separating the chunks by size and discarding the waste. The site contained 4 major underground mines called number 2, 3, 4, and 6, which I've already mentioned, and they ran about, 3 to 5 miles in length. And then on the surface, there were 2 more mines called the number 1 and the number 5 that were mined out before, going underground. And what's left of the number 4 mine, folks have heard muffled disembodied whispering, felt an icy wind rush past, footsteps, and often there's a dreadful feeling of being watched. Now, the most unfriendly character to roam the area is not a long-dead miner entering or leaving the tunnels, but a vengeful white woman. So women back then were considered to bring bad luck if they entered a mine, or even walked onto the mining site. Yeah, I can vouch for the fact that miners, similar to actors, can be very superstitious people. Remember, I'm from a Canadian gold mining town myself. Now, the white woman began to appear in the 1940s. And remember how I mentioned the mines didn't have running water? Yeah, the men would collect buckets from a well. So one day when the men went to collect water, and to their horror, discovered the body of a young woman dressed in all white, floating in the well. Her skin had turned an icy blue in, the post-mortem state, and shortly after removing the body from the well, mine number 4 became a hub of paranormal activity. Men that were heading home after a long shift would get fiercely attacked by this woman. And wounded, they got treated at the nearby hospital, and those events would happen until about the mid-1960s after the discovery of the killer. Well, the turn of the 19th century dispelled many of the long-standing myths and legends that were once pretty common on the island. In some cases, they actually got replaced with all new supernatural horrors. Bell Island has been labeled the most haunted island in North America. So, moving forward, in the early 20th century up until the 1950s, the island had a blend of ethnicities. We're talking English, Irish, Scottish, German, and more. And they've all got their own superstitions as well. Before Newfoundland joined Canada as a province, it was a lawless place, filled with sailors, stowaways, misfits, and, the folklore got really mixed with the macabre. Wherever you found a piece of land, you planted your home, and there's a lot of things that happen that people still can't explain. What was I forgetting? Oh right, I almost forgot about the fairies. Once there was a man on Bell Island who actually disappeared for quite some time, and when he returned, he was totally different. He suddenly developed a serious speech impediment and walked hunched over with a cane in a jerky, unstable fashion. So the rumor was that the fairies took him. And hey, at the time, most of the community gossiped about this. According to locals, it's very common in old Newfoundland stories that if people have some kind of interaction with fairies, they are changed as a result. People in Newfoundland will also talk about a blast, where they will get an injury of some kind, they'll trespass on fairy ground and they'll be struck with the fairy arrow, and then they'll get a boil or a lump or something that's going to form on their body. And when that lump is cut open, things such as feathers and twigs are going to come out of that wound. And with what I know about fairies, this is officially the scariest curse on the list. They're very much something one does not mess with. Trust me.
Coming in at number 5 is the Great Pyramid of Giza. As one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Great Pyramid of Giza is a highly visited historical landmark. Located in Egypt, the Great Pyramid of Giza was built roughly 4,000 years ago. It took nearly 30 years to build the 481-foot pyramid, and ever since its construction, it has captivated the world with its enigmatic aura and awe-inspiring size. However, beneath its extraordinary exterior lies a dark legend that has haunted historians for centuries, the dreaded Curse of the Pharaohs. This ancient curse stems from the belief held by ancient Egyptians that the entombed pharaohs should not be disturbed in their eternal slumber, protecting the deceased on their journey to the afterlife. Anyone dumb enough to disturb these pharaohs would be struck with the wrath of the gods, unleashing a terrible curse upon themselves and their companions. The most infamous story surrounding the curse of the pharaohs involves the tomb of Tutankhamun, discovered by British archaeologist Howard Carter and his team in 1922. After working day and night to open the tomb, Howard Carter would send a messenger to his home to run an errand. When the messenger got to his house, he found a cobra that had broken in, a symbol of the Egyptian monarchy. This omen that Carter received was the only warning that he and his team got. And spoiler alert, they didn't listen to it. The team continued to enter the tomb, unearthing an astonishing treasure trove of artifacts. Soon after Tutankhamun's tomb's opening, a series of mysterious and untimely deaths would occur among those involved in the expedition. The first to go was Lord Carnarvon, the financial backer of the excavation, who died suddenly after getting an infection from a mosquito bite. 6 months after Carnarvon's death, a lesion on Tutankhamun's left cheek was found to be healed. Whether this correlates with Carnarvon's fatal mosquito bite remains a mystery, as his body decomposed before the healed cheek was found. Over the years, numerous other accounts of misfortune and tragedy associated with the pyramid emerged, only adding to the curse's reputation and the fear surrounding it, such as George J. Gold, a visitor of the tomb who died of a fever he developed following his visit. There's also Henry Field, who received a scarab from the tomb from Howard Carter. The scarab was inscribed, "Cursed be he who moves my body. To him shall come fire, water, and pestilence." Shortly after, his house would burn down, and after it was rebuilt, it would then flood. The curse of the pharaohs remains a chilling tale that leaves a lingering sense of dread and unease. Every time we gaze upon the Great Pyramid of Giza, we are reminded that some doors are better left unopened, and that there are secrets in this world that may forever be shrouded in darkness. Anyway, coming in at number 4 is the cursed city of Akkad. The cursed city of Akkad was a bustling metropolis located within the heart of ancient Mesopotamia. It stood as the capital of the Akkadian Empire during the 24th and 23rd centuries BC. The origins of this curse are as mysterious as the city itself. According to ancient legend, the Akkadian king Naram Sin is said to have deeply angered the Mesopotamian god of wind, Enlil. He did this by plundering Enlil's temple and declaring himself a deity himself, which challenged the divine order. To punish Naram Sin, the gods unleashed a devastating curse upon the city of Akkad, sealing its fate in doom. The curse manifested itself through a series of unnatural and natural disasters: floods, famine, unending warfare, and of course, death. With the major city under so much duress from a mix of nature and war, the gods decreed that the city of Akkad be destroyed in order to spare whoever survived their wrath, and curse the ruins. Legends speak of wandering souls trapped within the ruins of Akkad, seeking revenge against any who dared to trespass their domain. The people who visited the ruins anyway would report hearing disembodied voices, cold chills, and the feeling that they were being watched by some unknown entity. To this day, historians and archaeologists alike recount tales of unexplained events happening to them and any who attempt to excavate or study the ruins of Akkad. Some have even gone so far to report ghostly figures walking among the ancient remains. The cursed city of Akkad serves as a chilling reminder of the greed of great rulers and how that greed often turns into hubris.
Number 3, Taira no Masakado. We're headed out to Japan for our next entry on this list. The number 3 entry is going to be the grave of Taira no Masakado, whom is attributed as being Japan's first samurai. Tom Cruise being the last samurai, of course, and the identity of all the samurais in between that, totally unknown, lost to history. Now, the story of Taira no Masakado is absolutely fascinating, especially if you love Japanese history. He was a samurai who rebelled against the central government in 10th century Japan. He claimed the title of new emperor and led a revolt in the Kanto region. Masakado's rebellion was eventually suppressed and he did fall in battle, but his legend grew over time and he became revered as a folk hero and a symbol of resistance. Masakado's story embodies the struggle against oppressive rule and the enduring spirit of the Japanese people. And enduring spirit, that might have a few more meanings. When the Ministry of Finance burned down during an earthquake in 1923, the at the time superstitious Japanese emperor blamed Masakado, who had been dead for 1,000 years at this point, so probably not directly involved, but a ghostly curse maybe. The grave superstition actually extended outside of Japan. When the US was occupying Japan in 1945, they refused to go anywhere near Masakado's final resting place. A bank was erected where the shrine was, and a few years after it was built, the branch declared bankruptcy, funny enough. In a last-ditch attempt to save their bank and appease the spirit, they opened an account for Masakado. It didn't help much, and probably just offended him more when he saw that his bank account was empty. These days, there's a small garden dedicated to Masakado's memory where you're invited to come pay homage and respect to Japan's first samurai, but if I was you, I would avoid building anything there at all. Maybe just take a few pictures, sit on a bench, and say something nice to him. Number 2, Shakespeare's grave. Who's the most famous writer of all time? You could probably make a very strong case that it's William Shakespeare, the beloved playwright and nemesis of high schoolers. All his characters are household names, and his plays have been played over and over and over and over around the world. There's probably much ado about nothing happening in a park near your house right now. You probably wouldn't think of an esteemed playwright from the 16th century in England to be someone you would hear about on a list of cursed tombs. But would you believe that Shakespeare's grave is said to be cursed? I hope you believe it, because it's true. Now, Shakespeare's own name isn't on the tomb. Shakespeare's own name isn't on the tomb, according to Reuters, but the inscription on his grave definitely bears mentioning. Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. Thank you. I did Statford for a few years. Yeah, thank you. It's no big deal. It's no big deal, guys. The warning worked. Buildings constructing repairs in 2008 went out of their way to avoid the gravesite at all, but not everyone would heed the bard's curse. According to an archaeologist, Kevin Coles, there is reason to believe that at some point in time, for unknown reasons, somebody dug up Shakespeare and took his skull. Alas, poor Shakespeare. I knew him well. That was from Hamlet. That's one of the plays that he wrote. There's been a lot of debate and wonder even why Shakespeare's name isn't inscripted on the grave. He's the only grave in the plot without a name, and he's a particularly famous grave. There are some who suspect that Shakespeare himself wrote the epitaph, which is pretty funny and in line with him, I think. But I don't know if that's entirely true, mostly because the epitaph was very, very easy to understand, and I didn't need to translate it on the bottom of the page like most of Shakespeare's work. Bait Sher Arim, Israel. You know, I joke around the office that it can be pretty tricky writing top 5 scary videos sometimes. Because of all the channels that we have, there's not a lot of new developments in the world of scary. You know? There's not a lot of new ancient folklore, there's not a lot of new haunted places, and there's not a lot of new cursed tombs being made. Well, they're not being made, they should be. But they are being discovered. I guess they could still get made too, there's still time. A recently uncovered tomb was discovered within a recently unearthed cave in an ancient cemetery in Beit She'arim, Israel. Would you believe this is the first tomb that has been found there in 65 years? Now, the archaeologists termed the tomb significant because it was the first time ever that a tomb has identified a dead person as converting to Judaism. The tomb had a strange message scrawled in ominous red writing reading, Yaakov Hagar vows to curse anybody who would open this grave, so nobody will open it. 60 years old. Yaakov Hagar translates to Jacob the proselyte, which means a convert to Judaism. No one knows exactly who wrote this inscription. An archaeologist from the University of Haifa said the message was inscribed to ensure the resting place of the dead remained undisturbed. It was to prevent others from opening the tomb at a later point, which happened quite often. Reusing tombs through time, said Adi Ulrich, the archaeologist. Totally can sympathize with that. When I was younger, I had to share my room with my siblings, had to share a bunk bed. I wouldn't want to share a tomb. I'd want a tomb all to myself. Ulrich also said that the inscription is from the late Roman or early Byzantine period, a time when Christianity was strengthened. And here we find evidence that there were still people who chose willingly to join the Jewish people. That's an interesting thing to find on a tombstone. And currently, as of this writing, it has yet to curse anyone too much, but also they didn't disturb it too much. So let's just hope they keep some of those stones where they are and they can keep those curses underground. Number 5, Timur the Conqueror. Timur the Conqueror was a 14th century conqueror and founder of the Timurid Empire. And according to the legend's inscriptions on his tomb, there was a warning of calamity for anyone who dares disturb his remains. And I would also just take this moment as a general rule of thumb, you shouldn't disturb anyone's tomb. Anyone at all. It doesn't matter if they were a famous conqueror or just like a milkman or something, you know? But definitely don't disturb famous conquerors who have ancient curses placed upon them. Mikhail Gerasimov was a Soviet scientist and wanted to dig up the conqueror, not for personal gain or to rob his tomb for loot, but rather to reconstruct his face, as he was a pioneer of paleoanthropology, which is a very fancy schmancy word for reconstructing the dead, making 3D models of their faces and stuff, so we have an idea of what historical figures look like. It's really cool tech. Now, it should be stated, several religious leaders in Uzbekistan warned him against digging up Timur. There was 2 consecutive warnings in the tomb itself. The first, plain sight, said, "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble." Now that probably should have been enough to discourage the trick, but if you keep pushing forward, the second inscription read, "Whomever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I." Well, Who's gonna take that seriously? Well, 3 days after the excavation of Timur's tomb, a certain troublesome Austrian failed art student and a certain group of German National Socialists invaded Russia in Operation Barbarossa, which I think we could make a strong argument was a more terrible invader. In 1942, Timur's body was returned and buried with proper Islamic rites, and the Battle of Stalingrad in the same year marked a major turning point for Russia in the course of World War II. Coincidence perhaps, or was this evidence of an ancient curse being reversed? I feel like that's gotta be one of the first times you hear of a curse getting undone. And if you're looking for way more videos about scary curses, well, you already know the Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. And you better subscribe or I'm gonna curse you. No, don't worry. No curses at all, just a little joke. But do make sure you hit subscribe, ring that little bell so you don't miss any of our videos, but if you'd be so kind, do it at the end of this video, because I got 4 more cursed tombs coming up for you right now. Number 4, Casimir Jagiellon IV. Our next entry at number 4 on this list is a new one to me. I'd never even heard of this guy, so hopefully it's a new one for you as well. It's the tomb of King Casimir IV Jagiellon. King Casimir IV was one of Poland's most beloved heroes right after Geralt of Rivia. Under King Casimir's reign, according to Britannica, he subdued the Teutonic Knights and fought to keep a union between Poland and Lithuania while recovering lost lands taken from kings before. Pretty cool king stuff. His legacy is that of one of Poland's most notable leaders, and his grave has left quite a lasting impact on the country. After King Tut's grave was exhumed, around 40 years after, something very similar happened to a research crew in Poland at the tomb of Jagiellon. Because no one learns any lessons. Researchers were eager to dig up the king to learn about his death and dug right on in. Again, you gotta listen, you gotta learn. You saw the people digging up King Tut, did not work well for them. Things did not go well for the excavation team. Unearthing the king under Wavell Chapel was easy enough, but it's the examination that started to claim so many lives. As the examination was in progress, those involved started to die from strokes and infections. Within days, 4 were dead, and within years, around 15 of them were dead. Was it a fungus inside the coffin and tomb that had infected the researchers? Or perhaps were they playing with something up far above them and far more powerful than they ever could have understood? Again, I don't know how many more times I can beat this drum. If you have to dig up the grave of an ancient king or an ancient emperor or an ancient conqueror or anything, at the very least bring like a priest or something, or somebody to bless the place, somebody to do a little anti-curse work. You're setting yourself up for failure that way.
Number 3, Casimir IV Jagiellon. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that again. The first time was bad enough, so from here on out he will be referred to as King C for my ease of being. Poland has a bit of a broken and weird history as a nation, but one of their brightest eras came thanks in part to King C. Under his reign, he famously subdued the Teutonic Knights once and for all, and fought hard to retain the union between Poland and Lithuania, all the while recovering lost lands taken from previous kings. His efforts were largely successful, thus ranking him as one of Poland's most notable leaders. King C was eventually interred at Wawel Cathedral in Krakow. The tomb is a late Gothic masterpiece made from mainly red marble from Adnet, near Salzburg. It is composed of a sarcophagus, over which was sculpted a canopy and supported by ornate arches. The inside of the canopy was lined with limestone and includes a late Gothic crown. The nature of the sculpting of the crown and arches echoes the ornate carving of wooden altarpieces at the time. The arches are supported by marble pillars, the capitals of which feature biblical scenes. A full-length sculpted effigy of Casimir lies on top of the sarcophagus, and it's an unusual depiction. King C is presented as being in agony and is dressed in a clerical cloak only used at coronations. The sides of the sarcophagus bear the arms of King C's kingdoms and territories. In 1973, a group of archaeologists and researchers were eager to figure out more about the king's death nearly 500 years after his funeral, and they dug right in and opened it up like a Kinder egg. Unfortunately, things didn't go well for the excavation team. Unearthing the king under Wawel Chapel was easy enough, but it's the examination that started to claim so many lives. Even as it was in progress, those involved started to die from strokes and infections, and within days, 4 were dead. Within years, around 15 were dead. While it has since been proven that it was a fungus inside the coffin that was the cause of death, there's always a possibility that maybe, just maybe, it was something more sinister. Curses don't always have to present as a mysterious unknown. They can have explainable science behind them, for crying out loud. Number 2, Nostradamus. It's not surprising that the man who could predict the future sought to protect his resting place with a curse as well as a prediction of when his tomb would be raided. After all, nothing about Nostradamus is ever complete without a good prediction or two. So he was a French astrologer, apothecary, physician, and reputed seer, best known for his book Les Prophéties, which was published in 1555 and is a collection of 942 poetic quatrains allegedly predicting future events. Nostradamus' father's family had originally been Jewish, but had converted to Catholic Christianity a generation before he was born. He studied at the University of Avignon, but was forced to leave after just over a year when the university closed due to an outbreak of the plague. He worked as an apothecary for several years before entering the University of Montpellier, hoping to earn a doctorate, but was almost immediately expelled after his work, which at the time was forbidden by university statutes, was discovered. He first married in 1531, but his wife and two descendants died in 1533 during another plague outbreak. He fought alongside doctors against the plague before remarrying to Anne Ponsarde, with whom he had 6 descendants. He wrote an almanac for 1550, and as a result of its success, continued writing them for future years as he began working as an astrologer for various wealthy patrons. He suffered from severe gout towards the end of his life, which eventually developed into edema. In late June of 1566, he summoned his lawyers to draw up an extensive will bequeathing his property plus 3,444 crowns, which is around 300,000 American in today's currency, minus a few debts, to his wife pending her remarriage, in trust for her sons pending their 25th birthdays and her daughters pending their marriages. On the evening of July the 1st, he's alleged to have told his secretary, Jean de Chavigny, "You will not find me alive at sunrise." And what do you know? The next morning, he was reportedly found dead, lying on the floor next to his bed and a bench. He was buried in the local Franciscan chapel in Salon, but reinterred during the French Revolution in the Collégiale Saint-Laurent, where his tomb remains to this day. In a quintessential Nostradamus quatrain, he calls out whoever would dare disturb his tomb, "He who will open the tomb found, and will come to close it promptly, evil will come to him, and one will be unable to prove if it would be better to be a Breton or a Norman king." Our report from York University goes into detail about what just kinda happened when the tomb of Nostradamus was disturbed in 1793. In the heart of the French Revolution, French soldiers went after the fabled tomb, ignoring the supposed rumor that whoever opens the tomb would be, killed. It's said that the soldier who opened the tomb found a sign around Nostradamus' neck that predicted the exact date. After drinking wine out of his skull, the soldier was then killed by a stray bullet. Hey, that's what you get for messing with the wishes of the dead, my dude. Number 1. Mexico City mummies. Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History says the appearance of fungal growth on a traveling display is causing concern, and rightfully so. Known as the Mummies of Guanajuato, the exhibit made an appearance in the United States in 2009. But it was like a recent stop in Mexico City, showing off 6 mummies in glass cases that has led the Institute to alert the public, especially considering they don't know just how airtight those glass display cases really are, and that they're without warnings or safeguards against biohazards. From some of the published photos, at least one of the corpses on display, which was inspected in November of 2021, shows signs of a proliferation of possible fungus colonies. Now, if you remember the infections that have emerged from other tombs as revenge, I'm calling that for this one as well. Experts believe the 19th or 20th century corpses were unintentionally mummified as a possible byproduct of the mineral-rich environment, an airtight, dry underground burial vault, or some other environmental cause. Some of the mummies still have hair, skin, and even preserved clothing, but there's an obvious lack of embalming or other common mummification products. In the early 1900s, the poses and marketing of the mummy exhibit took on a distinct horror element. Some of the bodies were positioned with arms folded across chest and jaws in an open position to create the appearance that the mummies were screaming, which is extremely disrespectful to the dead. In February of 2022, an effort was launched to begin identifying the mummies, but nothing yet. While it isn't an obvious curse like some of the other spots I've spoken about today, I have a feeling any day now we're gonna learn more. And that brings us to the end of our time, and once again, I'm gonna emphasize this, leave the dead alone. Seriously, resting in peace ain't just a figure of speech. Number 5, King Tut. The Curse of the Pharaohs, or the Mummy's Curse, is a curse alleged to be cast upon anyone who disturbs the mummy of an ancient Egyptian, especially a pharaoh. This curse, which does not differentiate between thieves or archaeologists, is claimed to cause bad luck, illness, or death. The tomb of Tutankhamun, or King Tut for short, was discovered in the Valley of the Kings in 1922 by excavators led by the Egyptologist Howard Carter and his friend George Herbert, otherwise known as Lord Carnarvon, more than 3,300 years after King Tut's death and burial. Whereas the tombs of most pharaohs were plundered by grave robbers in ancient times, Tut's tomb was hidden by debris for most of its existence and therefore not extensively robbed. The unexpectedly rich burial consisted of more than 5,000 objects, many of which were in a highly fragile state, so conserving the burial goods for removal from the tomb required an unprecedented effort. It thus became the first known, largely intact royal burial from ancient Egypt. To date, the discovery of the tomb is widely considered one of the most famous archaeological discoveries of all time. The opulence of the burial goods inspired a media frenzy and popularized ancient Egyptian-inspired designs with the Western public. To the Egyptians, who had recently become partially independent of British rule, the tomb became a symbol of national pride, strengthening Pharaonism, a nationalist ideology that emphasized modern Egypt's ties to the ancient civilization, and creating friction between Egyptians and the British-led excavation team. Just 2 months after opening the tomb to the public, George Herbert was dead of red body fluid poisoning from a mosquito bite on his cheek. Several people, such as the author Marie Corelli and a psychic known as Cairo, claimed to have warned George of mortal peril before his death. Arthur Weigel, a former Egyptologist who served as the Daily Mail correspondent on the tomb, said he had observed George joking as he entered the tomb and remarked, "If he goes down in that spirit, I give him 6 weeks to live." George's son and heir, Henry, said that Cairo suffered a power outage at the moment of his father's death, and in England, his father's dog let out a howl and died at the same time. Another such story, recounted by those involved in the excavation, involved a canary that Howard Carter had bought at the beginning of the digging season. Initially, the Egyptian workmen regarded the bird as a sign of good luck, and when the tomb was discovered, they dubbed it the Tomb of the Bird. When a cobra entered Howard's house and ate the canary, the Egyptians then called it an ill omen, relating the intruding animal to Uraeus, the protective cobra emblem on the brow of King Tut's statues. When George A. Gold, who had visited the tomb, died the following May, his death was also attributed to the curse, as was that of Aubrey Herbert, George's half-brother, in September. Later additions to the list of cursed deaths included those of Mace in 1928, George's secretary Richard Berthel in 1929, and Weigel in 1934, along with Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, a radiologist who examined the mummy. And still for others, a slew of bad luck awaited them. Howard's friend, Sir Bruce Ingram, had his house burned down and later fled, thanks to a gift he was given that came from the tomb. Honestly, this is enough for me to never want to disturb a tomb in my lifetime, but let's move on and strengthen my argument. Number 4. Tamerlane. In June of 1941, Mikhail Gerasimov, a Soviet scientist, wanted to dig up the conqueror Tamerlane to reconstruct his face. That was his kind of thing as a doctor. He pioneered the field of paleoanthropology, which is just a very scholarly way of saying reconstructing the dead. Hey, it's a lot better than what a lot of other doctors were specializing in at that time. Local residents and Muslim clergy tried to stop the excavations, but the expedition continued its work despite everything. Tash Mohammad Kariniazov was the leader of the expedition, which, other than Mikhail, also included the writer and historian Sadrian Aini, the famous Orientalist A. Semenov, and M. Gerasimov, along with a young cinematographer by the name of Malik Kayumov. These excavations were mainly aimed to examine the human remains in the tombs and to prove that they belonged to Tamerlane and his closest relatives. The group first opened the tombs of Ulugh-Bek's son, and then the tomb of Timur's sons, Miranshah and Shahrukh. On June 18th, they discovered the remains of Ulugh-Bek, the grandson of Timur, and on June 19th, the heavy gravestone was taken from the Tamerlane's tomb. All this was done while ignoring 2 consecutive warnings on the tomb itself. The first warning was inscribed in plain sight and well known, saying, "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble." The second was a surprise, hidden within the tomb itself, reading, "Whomsoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I." Well, finally on June 20th, the tomb of Tamerlane was opened, and the mausoleum was filled with a sharp, choking odor that of the mixture of resins, camphor, rose, and frankincense. It should be noted that Timur died in Otrar on his way to China, so to be buried in Samarkand, he had to be embalmed. 3 days later, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa and invaded Russia. Few would argue that the evil German dictator would qualify as an invader more terrible than Tamerlane. Those that dispute the curse point out that Operation Barbarossa was already planned and underway before the invasion of Russia. Of course, sure, you can argue that. But you also have to note that in 1942, when the body was finally returned and buried with full Islamic rites, the Battle of Stalingrad changed the course of the war for the Russians.
Centralia, Pennsylvania. In 1962, a mysterious fire ignited from an unknown cause within the coal deposits below Centralia, Pennsylvania. Now, as long as burning coal is exposed to oxygen, it can continue to blaze and emit harmful gases for hundreds of years. Now, due to the sulfur and carbon monoxide seeping out of the mine, the town of 1,000 residents was evacuated in 1992, with only around a dozen people opting to actually stay in their homes. It became a complete ghost town, and many people visit there and say they can still smell the fire burning on the streets as they pass by. It's truly a very spooky story, enough to be one of the scariest urban legends. Bhangarh Fort. Now the Bhangarh Fort is a 16th century fort built in the Rajasthan state of India. The town was established during the rule of Bhagwant Das as the residence of his second son, Madho Singh. Now the fort and its precincts are well preserved. According to legend, a sadhu lived within the fort area, and according to his injunction, any house built in the precinct of the fort should not be taller than his own, and if the shadow of any such house fell on his house, it would result in destruction of the fort town. When columns were added to the fort that cast a shadow on the sadhu's house, the result was destruction of the fort and surrounding towns. Now, according to another tale, a priest who was a practitioner of black magic fell in love with a beautiful Bhangarh princess with many suitors. Now, one day the priest followed the princess to the marketplace and offered her a love potion. However, she refused it, throwing it onto a large rock that consequently rolled onto the priest and crushed him to his demise. Before he passed, the priest cursed the entire village, condemning it to destruction and desolation. Bodie, California, the epitome of an old west town. Bodie is one of the oldest ghost towns in America. In its heyday, it housed dozens of saloons and a rough crowd, which is putting it nicely. Still, it was a thriving, unruly place until two fires burned down the mills. After that, business halted and forced people to abandon Bodie, leaving it to, the dust and tumbleweeds. It actually became a state historic park in 1962 and still looks like a little slice of 19th century American history. Now, these small towns also look like they're frozen in time, but people still shockingly live in them. Cahaba, Alabama. Cahaba was actually Alabama's first state capital, but it was abandoned after just 46 years. Now, since it's located on the confluence of the Cahaba and Alabama rivers, flooding regularly overtook the town, destroying buildings and slowly, turning it back into wilderness. Economic trouble also took its toll, first as the state legislature was moved to Selma and later from the Civil War. Today, the abandoned city of Cahaba functions as a historical archaeological site, and it's one of the oldest historic towns that's said to be haunted and even potentially cursed. Well, have you been to any of these scary places? Let me know. Thanks for watching. I'm your host Ashley. Until next time, stay scared. These scary stories from America's most haunted ghost towns will send chills down your spine and give you nightmares. Jefferson, Texas, in eastern Texas near the Arkansas and Louisiana borders, would-be ghost hunters will run across the town of Jefferson and the haunted Jefferson Hotel. It's been in operation since the late 1800s. This historic hotel and one-time brothel has borne witness to a healthy dose of Texas history. The hotel started recording the guests' encounters with the ghost hauntings, its rooms and corridors, like the vanishing man who comes and goes and stomps around as he pleases in the hotel's Book of the Deceased. Now, a stay here could have you bumping into all kinds of tormented souls, including Judy, an adult entertainment worker, likely unalived in the hotel, allegedly. She now writes her name in the condensed steam left on mirrors after patrons take a hot shower. This hotel is known as the most haunted hotel in the world. Talk about terrifying, right?
Next up at number 3 is Australia's very own Ayers Rock, also known as Uluru. The curse of Uluru casts a mighty shadow of fear over this iconic sandstone monolith in Australia's vast outback. Rising majestically from the rugged desert landscape, Uluru holds sacred significance for the indigenous Australian peoples. According to Aboriginal beliefs, Uluru is a site that holds tremendous spiritual power and holds the essence of the ancestral beings who once walked the earth and shaped the land. The spirits that reside within the monument are said to be its guardians, and disturbing the site is believed to invoke a potent curse upon those who disrespect its sanctity. Tourists who venture too close to the rock, take photos of it, or even have taken rocks or soil as souvenirs have reportedly faced long runs of bad luck, misfortune, and a string of unfortunate incidents, all attributed to the wrath of these ancestral spirits. Tourists often regret stealing from the sacred location, going on long journeys to return stolen parts of Ayers Rock. The Uluru National Park's main office receives hundreds of packages containing contraband from the site, many containing notes claiming to have experienced great misfortune since taking the contraband. In response to the curse and deep cultural significance of the rock, the local Anangu people, traditional custodians of Uluru, officially banned the climbing of the landmark in 2019 to respect the cultural sensitivities of the site and to protect naive tourists unaware of the curse that could land upon them. Uluru's curse stands as a testament to the profound spiritual connection Australian Aboriginals have with their land, and teaches us that some places are best approached with caution and respect. So if you ever plan on going rock climbing, I'd recommend taking Ayers Rock off your list. Counting down to number 2 is the ancient Roman city of Pompeii. Pompeii, a city frozen in time, the catastrophic volcanic eruption on Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. It holds a haunting tale of a curse that echoes through the ages. The city's ruins remain preserved by layers of volcanic ash, giving us a snapshot of the terror felt by its residents at the time of the eruption. The curse of Pompeii is intertwined with the city's tragic fate. According to ancient accounts and historical records, the people of Pompeii lived a life of indulgence and decadence, always turning a blind eye to any warning signs of their impending demise. It was this blind eye and disregard for the gods that are considered to be the origins of the curse that ultimately led to the devastating eruption. Legend states that as Mount Vesuvius erupted in a deadly fury, a haunting wail could be heard all across the land. Many go to say that this disturbing cry was manifested by the spirits of Pompeii's many citizens, forever trapped in a volcanic grave. Many archaeologists and researchers have ventured to the city's ruins, and many of which end up telling tales of strange accidents, illnesses, and encounters with the spirits of those entombed in ash. There are famous stories of adventurers who would steal pieces of ceramics and pottery, who would then return them to Pompeii because of the terrible misfortune that befell them. One woman reported seeing strange apparitions and hearing eerie voices at night. These shadowy figures would follow her around and make her life miserable until she would eventually return the stolen artifacts to the ashen city. Even today, tourists who wander the ruined streets of Pompeii will report hearing faint cries and whispers, the lingering echoes of a fallen civilization. And at the number 1 spot is none other than the Forbidden City in Beijing, China. A grand city located at the center of the imperial city of Beijing, the Forbidden City boasts a history that spans over 3,000 years. It acts as the most iconic landmark of ancient Beijing, with stunning architecture, and it is surrounded by numerous beautiful gardens and temples. However, the city's majesticism hides a dark, mysterious curse that has left even the most seasoned historians wary of its power. The Forbidden City was built during the Ming Dynasty. It served as an imperial palace for the Chinese emperors until the end of the Qing Dynasty. The Forbidden City acted as a central hub of political power and prestige. Its construction involved the toil of countless workers, and legends speak of their suppressed suffering, giving the city an unsettling aura. This would form the curse, and it is believed to stem from the torment endured by the laborers and the suffering inflicted upon those who worked on its construction. Their souls forever tethered to the palace seeking retribution for the unjust treatment. Throughout history, eerie tales of unexplained phenomena and bizarre occurrences have circulated among those brave enough to explore the Forbidden City. Stories range from ghost sightings to inexplicable cold spots that have chilled visitors to the bone, to hearing the wailing of tormented spirits reverberating across the city. One haunting story describes a weeping woman dressed in all white who would glide through the shadows of the city streets, her cries echoing across the many roads and alleyways. Another story tells of ominous flute music being heard after dark, coming from the city center. In the face of the Forbidden City's chilling reputation, many historians and researchers approach their work with fascination and great caution, as they are both allured by the idea of unlocking the city's dark secrets and fearful of its vengeful spirits and cursed aura. The Forbidden City remains a testament to China's rich heritage and the enduring spirit of its people, and acts as a lesson to not inflict such torment to those who build the beautiful cities that enchant and attract visitors from all around the world.